Hello students, welcome to all. This is Dr. Vignesh Karmeka, lecturer in Jaipur. In previous video, that is man and environment part 1, we have been discussed about various points to cover in this. The points covered in previous video are introduction to environment, meaning and definition of environment, importance of environmental studies, components of environment, and classification of environment. In this part 2, we shall discuss about structure of environment, nature of man, interactions of man in the diverse environments, man's adverse interaction with the environment, environmental awareness, and environmental management. Let us start with the structure of environment. Environment is both physical and biological. It includes both living and non-living components. A. Physical components, physical environment. The physical environment is classified into 3 broad categories such as solid, liquid, and gas. These represent the following spheres. 1. The lithosphere, that is solid air. 2. The hydrosphere, that is water component. And 3. The atmosphere, that is gases. As such, the 3 basic of physical environment may be termed as lithospheric environment, hydrospheric environment, atmospheric environment. The scientists have classified them into smaller units based on different spatial scales. For example, mountain environment, glacier environment, plateau environment, and coastal environment. B. Biological environment. The biological of the environment consisting of 1. Plants, 2. Animals. Thus, the biotic environment further be divided into flora environment and faunal environment. All the organisms work to form their social groups and organizations at several levels. Now, we move to the nature of man. What is generally known as man is also known by such other names as mankind, humankind, and human being. These are generic names that cover both sexes, male and female of the organism, that goes by the biological name of Homo sapiens. This is a name that means the perfect man. This is the form of human being that is also known as the modern man. This is a name that reminds people that the humankind of today is scientifically a product of organic evolution, which involved translating from lower forms of the human beings to less perfect to the perfect human being we have today. This biological evolution involved the translation of human forms from Drypithecus through Australopithecus, Homo habilis, and Homo erectus to Homo sapiens. It is this evolution of mankind that confers on him the traits that makes him more highly developed than other animals. It is also this evolution that makes man to be more sophisticated than other living things, which in not only exerts dominance upon but can also manipulate to shoot his purpose. who, according to Pastor Aduboy, is a special being comprising of a threefold components of physical, social, and spiritual being, acquired his special endowments during his evolution that involved thousands of years. Fatterbury highlighted the special endowments of humankind which make him to be unique among other creations of God. All the natural endowments of humankind have no parallel in other living things. They are what have added together to confer supremacy of humankind over other living things. They are also what are contributing to making him not only to dominate over any environment he finds himself, but also manipulate such environment by the way he chooses. It is the complex interplay of his interactions within each of the diverse environments together with the complex interplay of the interactions between the diverse environments that give rise to the title of this module. While still on the nature of man, it must be appreciated that threefold nature of mankind contributes to making him a complex being whose actions and behaviors are much influenced by each of these three components of him. It is the complex interplay of these three components of mankind that contribute to determining the role of individual persons in environment. However, whenever the concept of man in his environment is being focused upon, it is the role of mankind in population and communities that is actually being highlighted in the environment where such populations and communities live or reside. Cognizance must, however, be taken of the fact that the collective action of human beings in these populations and communities may, to some extent, be reflecting an interplay of the actions of individual members of the population or communities. The dominant role of some individuals in such actions may not be ruled out, particularly so if they occupy leadership positions or positions of responsibility. This analysis of the nature of man is done to enable readers appreciate that it is the balanced interplay of the three components of humankind that make him a balanced personality. Where any of these three components is defective or more than one of the components are defective, such a defective personality will be defective in his contributions in the population or community, or better still, in the society. Where such people are in leadership positions, then the population or the society is in for trouble, and consequently the environment and by projection development of the society, the converse is also true. Next, we will discuss about the functions of man in his environment. Man claims to be most skilled and cultivated of all the organisms. This is the reason why his social organization is more systematic. The three aspects of man, example, physical, social, and economic function in the biotic environment as under. One, the physical man. The physical man is one of the organisms, populations, or biological community. He is in need of basic elements of the physical environment like habitat, air, water, and food. Besides, like other biological populations, he releases waste into the ecosystem. 2. Social man. The social man performs the following functions. A. Establishing social institutions, forming social organizations, formulating laws, principles, and policies, and taking steps to safeguard his existence, interest, and social welfare. And the third is the academic man. The academic man enjoys and utilizes resources from the physical and biotic environment with his skills in the technologies. The academic function makes the man an environment or geomorphic process as he transports matter and energy from one component of the ecosystem to the other. There may be any following two situations. They are A. Is exploitative functions may be in harmony with the natural environment. Such functions do not necessarily involve change in the working of the ecosystem. B. These functions may exceed the critical limit. Consequently, the equilibrium of the environment or ecosystem is disturbed and a great number of environmental ecological problems crop up. These are detrimental to man besides to whole population of human species in a given ecosystem. Now, man-environment relationship. Man-environment relationship is as old as the evolution of man. Since the evolution of man, the physical elements of the planet Earth, such as terrain, soil, water, climate, flora, and fauna, formed man's environment. During the time, man was typically a physical man because of his limited warmth, requirements, and total dependence on nature. With the growth in social and economic activities, advancement in technologies, man expanded his own environment through design and skill to have provisions for improved and better food, shelter, access, and comfort or luxuries. Man's ability to survive in a variety of ecosystems and his unique ability to adapt to a great variety of external conditions make man-environment relations quite a fascinating area of study. The environment in which man survives and to which it adapts himself and which influences include physical, socio-cultural, biological aspects. Man and environment as never being static, and a great many factors are responsible for the shifts in man-environment relationship. Next, we will move with the interactions of man in the diverse environments. So, interactions occur within and between the diverse environments. For example, within the ecological environment, we have this natural environment operating as an ecosystem with three main groups of interaction within its components. These, according to Clare, are described by the terms actions, reactions, and coactions. The actions are the influences of the physical or non-living or abiotic components on the organisms. The reciprocal effects of the organisms on the non-living components are known as reactions, while the interactions between one group of organisms with another are described as coactions. For each of these three groups of interactions within a natural environment, which is an ecosystem, several examples can be cited. However, for the purpose of this part of the module, only these interactions involving human beings will be focused upon. These are positive interactions which bring benefits to man in one form or another. Man interaction with the natural environment. In the natural environment, the non-living components influence humankind in different ways, prominent among which are the following. The components of climate, such as sunlight, rainfall, temperature, and humidity, among others, benefit humankind in different ways. Sunlight is the ultimate source of the energy in the planet Earth. This is of benefit to mankind in diverse ways, prominent among which are the thermal energy, which provides warmth. Besides warmth, sunlight also provides illumination in the planet Earth. It is this illumination that makes man to see by the daytime. Rainfall, together with the other sources of water supply, such as snow, ice, and glaciers, that make water available to man. Temperature makes possible the diverse metabolic activities of man. Humidity provides a cool atmosphere conducive for human life, particularly in the tropical environment. The atmosphere provides human beings with the oxygen needed for the respiration, while it also provides a number of other gases that are of use to man in industries. The lands, soils, rocks, minerals, and minerals provide man with a large number of non-renewable natural resources, around which several agriculture, commercial, industrial activities of man and the socio-economic environment and the built environment are built. The human activities are built around these abiotic components of the natural environment. Similarly, the living components of the natural environment in the forms of plants, animals, and microorganisms, known as the biota of the ecological environment, are not only important as renewable natural resources, they are also of other forms of importance. They are all of importance in a large number of activities of man. Such activities include those of the socio-economic environment as well as the built environment. They also find use in the spiritual environment in a number of ways. Man also reacts in the different ways to the actions of the components of the natural environment on him. Such reactions may be of benefits to these environmental components. They may also be detrimental to them. It is such reactions that constitute the role of man as an anthropogenic factor in the ecological environment. The next is man interaction with socio-economic environment. The socio-economic environment, as earlier on being described as the environment in which most of human activities relating to virtually all fields of human endeavor that are come across in the social and management sciences of it. Mankind is involved in such issues as those involved in sociology, psychology, human resources management, insurance, and demography. Mankind is involved in several businesses and in accounting and economic matters. All these formal and informal business activities help in determining every country's gross domestic products. They also determine such other socio-economic indices as GDP, per capita, growth rate, unemployment rate, inflation rate, net budgetary position, balance of payments contribution of various sectors to GDP, among other growth socio-economic indices, among other economic indices. There are also the demographic indices of demographic growth, life expectancy, literacy rate, and human development index, among others. All these two are part of the socio-economic environment. Interactions involving man in the built environment involve several activities of the built environment in such exercises as land allocation for the diverse uses, production of layouts, surveying of lands, architectural design of buildings, and estimation of quantities of the materials needed for the building construction by quantity surveys. Others include landscaping of landed properties, evaluation of properties, and their allocation to individuals who live in such houses and rentage by estate managers. Such property agents also collect rents on such properties and see to their maintenance. Man builds houses in the built environment in response to the needs of people based on status, taste, spiritual disposition, climate, and functions. Activities of man in the built environment also include creating of green belts, disposal of waste in divided forms such as sewage, refuse, and garbage, and location of arbiters. Other includes provision of roads, drainage, windbreaks, and landfilling activities in waterlogged places. The next is the man interaction with the political or governmental environment. Mankind is involved in political activities through which governments are brought into power and opposition groups result. Such government also include the executives that sit at the helm of affairs in governments, the legislature and the judiciary. The legislation makes the laws and see to the implementation of these laws by agencies of governments as part of their oversight functions. The judiciary supervises the complaints of people to the laws and pronounces judgments on cases brought before that voted on issues of law. Besides political activities, people involved in governance see to it that the needs of people in terms of infrastructural development are met. They also present the country in different levels, both within the country and at the sub-regional and global levels. Political and governmental environment also enables humankind in leadership position to provide enabling environment for other environments to thrive. Next, man's interaction with the spiritual environment. These interactions involving the spiritual environment are made possible by the spiritual wherein man acquires right at the time of his evolution. It is said that man has grown within the process of his organic evolution. Such interactions in the spiritual environment occur in dreams, prayers, meditations, and other religious activities through which humankind is relating with the Supreme Being. It must also be appreciated that besides Almighty God, the Supreme Being, his holy angels and the devil and his cohort also exist in spiritual human environment for people to relate it with. The next is the man's adverse interaction with the environment. Dear students, earlier on in this title on the interactions of man in the diverse environments, the interventions of man in the diverse environments that are of benefit to the whole of these environments and their components are highlighted. Such interventions brings about positive developments in these environments by improving on their state and the state of their components. If all human interventions achieved in the diverse environments are on the positive note, then there will not be any cause for concern about the diverse environments. With such interactions, sustainable development can be assured in all the diverse environments. But with such interactions, sustainable development can be assured in all the diverse environments. But the truth is that this is never so with human interactions in all these diverse environments. What is common knowledge is that humankind is never in equilibrium in any of the environments. This is true of the natural environment, where man is an anthropogenic factor, and the other environments such as the socio-economic, built environment and political government environments, which are his creations. The spiritual environment is not the creation of man, and he still does not maintain an equilibrium with this environment in his interactions in this environment. Whereas the non-equilibrium that humankind establishes with the environments, ecological, socio-economic, built and political, are out of his greed, that of his non-equilibrium with the spiritual environment is born out of his sinful nature. In whatever environment mankind finds himself outside the spiritual environment, he is always tilting the equilibrium to himself at the expense of the welfare of such environments, the welfare of their components, and the overall sustainability of such environments, and the long-term sustainability of the overall development of nations, where these selfish interactions of man exist with the environments. Dear students, in this module, we also discuss the adverse interactions of man with each of the environments are outlined as under. 1. Man's adverse interactions with the natural environment. The positive interventions man has on the natural environment in reaction to the benefits this environment confers on mankind are relatively minimal in nature. They are limited to the efforts being made to conserve it through laws made to protect their components from illegal exploitation and arbitrary fights, and attempts being made to upgrade the productivity of the low-grade plants and domestication of some their wife. In contrast to this, token gesture of man to the conserve the natural environment are the large-scale destructions being done to this environment by him. Such destruction, which varies in magnitude from one locality to another, include the following. They are environmental pollution, burning, loss of biodiversity, greenhouse effect, ozone layer depletion, global warming. Others include land degradation, deforestation, poaching of wildlife, dumping of toxic wastes, illegal mining, gas flaring, and damage to aquatic life, among others. These adverse influence of man in the natural environment are of mixed nature, involving ecological as well as social challenges, brought about by men. Of the diverse ecological challenges of man in the natural environment, environmental pollution, climatic change, loss of biodiversity are global in nature. Others such as burning, deforestation, poaching of wildlife, dumping of toxic waste, illegal mining and damage to aquatic life and other ways in which the natural environment is being mismanaged or localized in nature, being confined mainly to the developing nations. The second is man's adverse interactions with the socio-economic environment. Like it is for the natural environment, the adverse interactions of man with the socio-economic environment are of a mixed grill, involving both ecological and sociological issues. Prominent among the ecological issues are environmental pollution, greenhouse effect, ozone layer depletion, global warming, climate change, massive loss of biodiversity, and gas flame. The most prominent of these sociological issues that constitute the adverse interactions of man in the socio-economic environment are economic meltdown of the present century, wars and upheavals, strange fires, strange diseases like corona, perversion of human culture in such things as same-sex marriage, lesbianism, homosexualism, and bestialism. Other cases of perversion of human culture are sex with the infants and rape. Other adverse interactions of man that have adverse consequences on the socio-economic environment include militancy, robbery, kidnapping, pipeline vandalization, ritual killings, and bombings such as the type by certain religious sects that go by different names. There are also demographic problems relating overpopulation, food insecurity, forced migration, refugee problems, and injustice of diverse nature, among others. Third one is the man's adverse interactions with the built environment. Prominent among the ecological issues involved in man's adverse interactions in the built environment are environmental pollution, greenhouse effect, ozone layer depletion, global warming, climate change, massive loss of biodiversity, improper disposal of refuse, sewage, garbage, floods, and erosions and release into the environment of landfill gases. The prominent sociological issues involved in man's adverse interactions in the built environment include strange fires, building collapse, illegal allocation of lands within green belt zones to people for building construction, and diverse forms of violence that include bombing, shooting of human beings, and slashing throats of human beings that are hunted and killed by violent people, as is being witnessed in the activities of some violent religious sects in the country Nigeria. Next, we will move with the man's adverse interactions with the political governmental environment. All actions and activities of man within the political or governmental environment that border on political corruption, impunity, nepotism, bad leadership, poor quality, and intensive governments all have adverse consequences on this environment. The consequences also go beyond the political governmental environment to affect all other environments. And the fifth is the man's adverse interactions with the spiritual environment. Non-recognition of a supreme being, lack of fear of this supreme being, non-recognition of his awesome nature, and lack of core spiritual values of love, faith, peace, service, holiness, among others, and agonize man against the Supreme Being, the Almighty God. Indulgence in sins of whatever type distances man from all benefits of believers and, on the contrary, attracts punishment. Such punishments may include not attaining the purpose of the Supreme Being for individuals and communities involved. Where leaders plunder the resources of their nation, they are distancing not only themselves but also their nation from benefits of the spiritual environment. The Bible records that the world was destroyed with the flood at the time of Noah as a result of corruption and violence. When calamities such as hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, erosions, droughts, and desertification and climate change are devastating the natural environment as well as the man-made environment of built environment, they may not be mere natural disasters as human beings cause. There may be punishment as a result of man, unacceptable stance at the spiritual environment with the Almighty God. When the socio-economic environment is being ravaged by such calamities as economic meltdown, wars and upheavals, strange diseases, and such others as the earlier listed environmental calamities, these may also be God's punishments for the offenses committed in the spiritual environment. When strange fires or consuming properties in the built environment and structures and their inhabitants are becoming victims of the frequent bouts of environmental disasters, they may not be unconnected with the diabolical stance of humankind in the spiritual environment. The next is the environmental awareness. Environmental education is distinct from traditional forms of education, and it is a holistic. It is essential to make the public aware of the formidable consequences of the environmental degradation, if not restored, or retarded and deformative measures undertaken would result in the extinction of life. It is a lifelong learning process directed at creating responsible individuals who explore and identify environmental issues, engage in problem solving, and take action effectively to improve the environment. We are facing various environmental challenges. It is essential to get the country acquainted with these challenges so that their acts may be eco-friendly. As a result, such individuals develop a deep awareness and understanding of environmental issues. This also helps to resolve many environmental challenges. Environmental awareness is to understand the fragility of our environment and the importance of its protection. Some of these challenges are as under. Dear students, let us discuss about each of these, such as growing population, poverty, agricultural growth, need to groundwater, development in forests, degradation of land, reorientation of institutions, reduction of genetic diversity, evil consequences of urbanization, and air and water pollution. Population. Now let us discuss each of them. The first one is the growing population. A population of over thousands of millions is growing at 2.11% every year. Over 17 million people are added each year. It puts considerable pressure on its natural resources and reduces the gains of development. Hence, the greatest challenge before us is to limit the population growth Although population control does automatically lead to the development, and the development leads to a decrease in population growth. But this development of the woman is essential. The second is poverty. India has often been described a rich land with poor people. The poverty and environmental degradation have a nexus between them. The vast majority of our people are directly dependent on the natural resources of the country for their basic needs of food, fuel, shelter, and fodder. About 40% of our people are still below the poverty line. Environment degradation has adversely affected the poor who depend upon the resources of their immediate surroundings. Thus, the challenge of poverty and the challenge of environment degradation are two facets of the same challenge. The population growth is essentially a function of poverty, because to the very poor, every child is an earner, an helper, and global concerns have little relevance for him. The third is agricultural growth. The people must be acquainted with the methods to sustain and increase agricultural growth with damage to the environment. High-yielding varieties have caused the soil salinity and damage to physical structure of the soil. The fourth is need to groundwater. It is essential of rationalizing the use of groundwater. Factors like community waste, industrial effluents, and chemical fertilizers and pesticides have polluted our surface water and affected quality of the groundwater. It is essential to restore the water quality of our rivers and other water bodies as lakes in an important challenge. Finding our stable strategies for consecration of water, provision of safe drinking water, and keeping water bodies clean, which are difficult challenges, is essential. The fifth is the development and forests. Forests serve catchments for the rivers. With the increasing demand of water, plan to harness the mighty river through large irrigation projects were made. Certainly, these would submerge forests, displace local people, damage flora and fauna. As such, dams on the Narmada, Bhagirathi, and elsewhere have become areas of political and scientific debate. Forests in India have been shrinking for several centuries owing to the pressures of agriculture and other uses. Vast areas that were once green stand today as wastelands. These areas are brought back under vegetative cover. The tribal communities inhabiting forests respects the trees and birds and animals that gives them sustenance. We must recognize the role of these people in restoring and conserving forests. The modern knowledge and the skills of the forest department should be integrated with the traditional knowledge and experience of the local communities. The strategies for the joint management of forests should be evolved in a well-planned way. The sixth is degradation of land. At present, out of the total 329 million hectares of land, only 266 million hectares land possesses any potential for production. Of this, 143 million hectares is agricultural land, nearly, and about 85 suffers from varying degrees of soil degradation. Of the remaining 123 million hectares area, 40 are completely unproductive. The remaining 83 million hectares is classified as forest land, of which over half is denuded to various degrees. Nearly 406 million head of livestock have to be supported on 13 million hectares area, or less than 4% of the land classified as patch land, most of which is overgrazed. Thus, our 226 million hectares, about 175 million hectares or 66% is degraded to varying degrees. Water and wind erosion causes further degradation of almost 150 million hectares. This degradation is to be avoided. The seventh is reorientation of institutions. The people should be roused to orient institutions, attitudes and infrastructures to suit conditions and needs today. The change has to be brought in keeping in view India's traditions for resource use management and education, etc. Change should be brought in education, in attitudes, in administrative positions and in institutions. Because it affects way people view technology, resource and development. And the eighth is the reduction of genetic diversity. The proper measures to conserve genetic diversity need to be taken. At present, most wild genetic stocks have been disappearing from nature. Wildlife, including the Asiatic lion, are facing problems of loss of genetic diversity. The protected areas network like sanctuaries, national parks, biosphere reserves are isolating populations. So, there are decreasing changes of one group breeding with another. Remedial steps are to be taken to check decreasing genetic diversity. And the ninth is evil consequences of urbanization. Nearly 27% of Indians live in urban areas. Urbanization and industrialization has given birth to a great number of environmental problems that need urgent attention. Over 30% of urban Indians live in slums. Out of India's 3,245 towns and cities, only 21 have partial or full sewerage and treatment facilities. Hence, coping with the rapid urbanization is a major challenge. And the 10th is air and water pollution. Majority of our industrial plants are using outdated and population technologies and makeshifts of facilities devoid of any provision treating their wastes. A great number of cities and industrial areas that have been identified as the worst in terms of air and water pollution. Acts are enforced in the country, but their implement is not so easy. The reason is their implementation needs great resource, technical expertise, political and social will. Again, the people are to be made aware of these rules. Their support is indispensable to implement these rules. Environmental awareness basically helps as a tool of education. This assists the human beings around the world to understand the economic and biological of preserving resources and tumbling or eliminating the unsafe effects of man-made changes. Environmental awareness or educational facilities facilitates human beings, recognizes the consequences of human actions and activities in various lands, and recognize the counteractive solutions. Nowadays, the media, both print and electronic, also plays a main role in making enormous environmental awareness. And now we move with the environmental management. Environmental management is a purposeful activity with a goal to maintain and improve the state of environmental resource affected by human activities and actions. Environmental management can be defined as the management of the interaction and impact of human activities and actions on the natural environment. Environmental management is therefore concerned with the description and monitoring of environmental challenges, with predicting future changes, and with attempts to maximize human benefit and to minimize environmental degradation due to human activities. Environmental management further aims to ensure the ecosystem services and biodiversity are protected and maintained for equitable use by future human generations, and also maintain ecosystem integrity as an end in itself by taking into consideration ethical, economic, and scientific variables. Environmental management tries to identify the factors that have a stake in the conflicts that may rise between meeting the needs but protecting the environment, such as identification, evolution, and control. Identification. Via complaints, concerns from the community, we identify a certain environmental problem. The next, evaluation. Inspections with relevant government departments, provincial and national, we determine extent of the problem. And next is control. The problem is brought to the attention of the transgressor, polluter, and the person or company who is informed to stop the illegal activity and address the problem or concerns, which include the rehabilitation of the areas. Dear students, in this module, we have discussed about the man and environment, components of environment, classification of environment, structure of environment, and interactions of man with the environment, even the adverse interactions. And we also focused on the environmental awareness, environmental management. And in the next session, I will be in front of you with the next chapter, next module, that is the meaning, definitions, concepts of resources. And thank you, Ananda.